I know this is totally cliche, but I'll say it anyway. The mindset that I have is
Mhm.
capital attraction, not capital raising.
Welcome everybody to another show of Real Deal Podcast. My name is Aman, and today we have Tony. Hey Tony, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's going great. Appreciate
So
being on the podcast.
there you go, Tony. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. So I'm Tony Castronovo. I'm based in the Houston, Texas market.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, been in real estate for probably about 9 years or so. Started in the single family space back in 2014. Then in
Mhm.
2018, I pivoted into multifamily.
Mhm.
Started by buying my first apartment building by opening my checkbook. I didn't really know much about syndication at the time, but I quickly learned that. And in 2019, I did my first syndication and have been focused on that business model ever since. I left my corporate job back in late 2021. So I've been full
Nice,
time in this
nice,
business
nice,
since
nice.
then for about a year and a half. I also, late last year, launched a coaching business. Just really focused on helping entrepreneurs and experienced business owners to either make the jump into a business or possibly grow an established business.
So, why did you choose to go towards real estate? Why not any other kind of investment class or anything?
I guess I got the bug a long time ago, but it took a little while to put action to that.
Mhm.
I literally got the bug back even before 2000.
Mhm.
But I'll date myself a little bit. My kids were born in 2002,
Mhm.
and I had been doing some education up to that point. I was literally about ready to start knocking on doors and taking some action. And that just was a major life change that kind of put the brakes on things for a little while.
Mhm.
And for anybody, your listeners that have young kids, your time can get sucked up in other priorities. So I put that on hold for a number of years. And then it wasn't until 2014 that I picked it back up. But really, the spark for me was I had a background in construction, and I just
Mhm.
loved everything about real estate and homes and other asset classes, building types. And it just was always something I figured I would get into when the time was right. And so I never lost faith in that. And finally, I bought my first rental home in 2014.
So, can you tell us something about your first rental home? Was it like a single family, and how did you manage, and what did you learn from that?
So probably like some of your listeners, when the idea of educating myself in real estate
Mhm.
popped up.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd been reading books and things like that, but Bigger Pockets came up and I started listening to some of their podcasts and following them. And the idea of the Burr model kind
Mhm.
of hit home to me. That made sense, right? I could buy a property below market. I could renovate it. I could put a tenant in there, get it reappraised, be able to pull my cash back out,
Yeah.
rinse and repeat, go off and do another, right?
Yeah.
So that was the model I was looking for. And I spent about 4 months just pounding the pavement. I literally looked at 75 different properties before I finally found the property that I bought. My poor
Great.
real estate agent at the time that I hired, he worked real hard for that commission. But from there, things sped up. And, what I learned from it was I did all the renovations myself because remember, I
Mhm.
got this construction
Yeah. Yeah.
background. And so that's a fun hobby. But
Mhm.
when you have a full time job and you want to grow a real estate business,
Yeah.
doing all that work yourself is a very slow way to
Yeah.
go. So I learned how to find contractors and
Mhm.
manage a team and really move things more methodically quicker.
Okay, that's pretty. I'm just kind of wondering, like, if somebody who don't have the construction business, how do they can manage? I don't think so. They can.
I mean, all they would do is skip that step that I spent
Yeah.
time figuring out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it was an attribute, but it was also kind of an Achilles heel that I could do the work. I wanted to do
Mhm.
the work, but I shouldn't do the work. I saved
Yeah.
a bunch of money,
Mhm.
but my time went into it, and I just can't scale that way. Nobody can scale that way. And so they would have just fast forwarded to, okay, you got to find contractors and you got to work those additional costs into your underwriting. And if it makes sense by hiring contractors, then certainly it would make sense if you did the work yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, can you also share about your first apartment deal?
Yeah. So if I
Mhm.
fast forward those 4 years in the single family space, I finally realized that I wanted to grow bigger. I was getting more
Mhm.
comfortable with the single family model, and I built
Mhm.
a small portfolio of homes, and I had a
Mhm.
nice process ironed out.
Mhm.
And I just decided, you know what, if I'm going to do multifamily, I'm going to go all in. So I
Mhm.
packaged the homes. I had 8 homes at
Mhm.
that point, and I packaged them and I sold them to a single investor, and I 1031 exchanged into my first multifamily.
Mhm.
So for those that don't know much about 1031, you basically can defer capital gains
Yeah.
taxes by purchasing a like kind property. And
Mhm.
so going from single family residential properties into a 20 unit multifamily apartment complex
Mhm.
was still like for like in the eyes of the IRS. And
Yeah.
so I did that to save on some gains. And then I opened my checkbook for the rest. And of course, got a
Yeah.
bank loan and, got the CapEx worked into that and so forth. But still, I covered quite a bit out of my own pocket.
So you had all the properties in Houston or somewhere else.
My single family homes were in the Houston area.
Mhm.
When I was looking for my first apartment complex, I quickly realized that buying one by myself
Mhm.
with my checkbook meant that I had a budget to work within. And within that budget was either kind of a war zone, class D type of
Mhm.
properties in, certain parts of Houston that I did not want to be
Mhm.
in, or I had to draw a bigger radius. So I
Mhm.
just told myself, because I was pretty hands on, I drew a radius around Houston of 2 hours. And I said, I'll look north, south, east, west. And I found a property kind of on the south side, about an hour and a half away. We spent a
Mhm.
little time working through a contract on that. Ultimately, it fell apart toward the end. And within a week, we pivoted. We found a property in College Station, Texas,
Mhm.
which for those that know Texas A&M University, that is the
Mhm.
city that we were in. And that was a little over an hour away, about an hour and 15 minutes away from my house.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So let's talk about your first syndication deal. So what was your role and how many units were there?
So, leading up to that purchase, I did everything I
Mhm.
could to learn about syndication, surround myself with people who were doing it. Uh, I ended up, yeah, and also I got to say, surrounding yourself with people that have done it allows you to think bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my first apartment complex was 20 units. This one was 60 units. It
Mhm.
was 3 times the size, probably still not as big as I could have thought, but nonetheless, it
Mhm.
was something that I was stretching myself, but still comfortable. Uh, the way for me to mitigate the risk of I've never done this before is find somebody to partner with that has done it. So
Mhm.
back then, my network wasn't as strong as it is today, but I did know somebody that was a bit of a mentor for several years. And he had probably about 500 units at the time. And so
Mhm.
I knew he had a lot of experience doing syndications. And so I brought him on as a key principal
Mhm.
into my deal. So he helped me by signing on the loan, bringing credibility, helping me with all the things I really didn't know, and was kind of there as an advisor throughout the process.
And how did you find the mentor? Because many people don't even know where to find a mentor.
I mean, lots of different ways. For me, it was literally somebody I knew from my corporate days. And like many, he had a side hustle for a while in real estate and eventually decided to go full time in it. And he was
Mhm.
strictly in multifamily apartments. He never even started in the single family.
Mhm.
So we always talked over the years, and as I was getting closer to multifamily in my journey, those talks became more frequent.
Mhm.
And when it was time for me to go for it, he was one of the first that I reached out to and said, "Look, I'm looking to do this. Can you somehow participate in a deal like this? Because there's a variety of things that I don't have experience doing."
Mhm.
And, we
Yeah.
eventually decided it made sense to partner. But other people could find partners or mentors by going to meetups, by listening to podcasts like this and taking action and actually
Yeah.
reaching out to those people.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember the first podcast that I listened to. It was a guest from the Michael Blanc show. I was
Mm.
like, hey, he lives in the Houston area. I'm going to call this guy. And I looked him up on LinkedIn and I got his information. I sent him an email. I said, can we talk? We had a great conversation. And then we just kept talking and developing a relationship over time. Otherwise, it's just education without action. And when you have that, there's just no results.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you said, right? You need to take action. Even if you fail, you still need to take action. And if we move on to your first deal again, what went wrong? What did you do to fix it?
My first multifamily deal?
First syndication deal.
Oh, first syndication. Ooh, man, what went wrong? Well, let me give you a hint. So we purchased it 3 months before the world changed with a little thing called COVID.
Oh boy.
The wrong time to buy a property, but who the heck knew that was coming? That was nowhere in anybody's business plan. That was not in a crystal ball anywhere. But we pivoted and we still made a successful um, purchase, a successful investment out of it.
Mhm.
But I mean, so many things with, trying to we're in the middle of a repositioning effort, trying to stabilize this property, doing all the renovations. I had construction crews all over the place on that property, interior, exterior. Found out that within a few months, my general contractor was closing the doors to his business. He just couldn't afford to keep operating anymore. So I became the general contractor by default. I ended up spending multiple days a week at the property and lots of phone calls, organizing crews, trying to find subcontractors. We couldn't evict anybody with moratoriums. We couldn't even show the property. I don't know if anybody
Yeah.
remembers that you
Yeah.
couldn't have physical showings. So
Oh
we
boy.
literally had to put keypads on the doors and give
Mhm.
prospects codes to get into the unit and show themselves. It was awful. So,
Then
but we
yeah.
pivoted, and we found ways to make it work. Maybe not part of the main track of our business plan, but you find alternatives, and we worked
Yeah.
with everything from different unit types, different pricing strategies, different ways to operate the property. I mean, we just figured all that stuff out along the way, and
Yeah.
ultimately we exited early. We went
Mhm.
through, we renovated 52 out of 60 units. We got it up to
Mhm.
100%
Wow.
occupancy, raised the NOI, and we sold that property a little over 2 years later and
Mhm.
exited with profits and moved straight into the next deal.
Yeah, that's what I try to tell people. Like, you can focus on location, you can focus on anything, but you cannot change the timing. You need to change your strategy if the timing is not right. So, what's your views that the way we are going right now in the market, the interest rate is increasing? How are you changing your strategy?
I mean, that's just one lever, right?
Yeah.
So interest rates changing. I think it's a little less about what the numbers are, but more that the volatility. Things are
Mhm.
changing so much. You just really have a hard time predicting where they're going to go by the time you actually close on something. So I think just overall, though, we're having to pull other levers in our
Mhm.
underwriting. So if interest rates
Yep.
go up, then we need to be looking at what does our pro forma look like? Can we cover debt
Mhm.
service coverage ratios? Maybe the leverage on the loan
Mhm.
is lower,
Yep.
and so that means that we need to raise more capital perhaps on
Mhm.
the deal. And when you have that, now you're kind of stretching some of your returns.
Mhm.
So we're just trying to work with all the different levers that we have. And sometimes that means price needs to come
Yep.
down
Yep.
and bring seller expectations more in line with buyer expectations.
So you mentioned capital raising, and you also mentioned before the call that you one of the superpower that you have is a capital raising. So, quick question: how do you raise the capital? What kind of value do you provide when you talk to your investors?
So I know this is totally cliche, but I'll say it anyway. The mindset that I have is
Mhm.
capital attraction, not capital raising.
Mhm.
So capital raising
Wow.
says you're transactional. You have a deal, you're trying to raise the capital for that deal. This is my business. And so every time I try to bring in capital for a deal, I'm actually trying to work on the next deal in front of me.
Mm.
So if that means that I share a deal with you and it's for educational purposes, maybe you're a new investor, haven't worked with you, we're looking at this as an opportunity for you to learn
Mhm.
either, maybe if this is your first time, how it works, how investing in multifamily syndication might work for you. Or if it's not your first time, maybe it's more the type of deal that I might bring to you in the future. So what kind of markets and maybe asset class, vintage, things like that I focus on. And
Mhm.
you know what? If that means that in 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 3 years from now, you might invest in one of my deals because I nurtured you and spent the
Mhm.
time and educated you and I wasn't trying to sell you, that's fine by me
Mhm.
because I have the long-term mindset. Deals
Yep.
that I was sharing with people 3 years ago that they never invested in, those investors are coming back now and looking at deals that I'm presenting today.
Got it. And how do you educate your investors?
Many ways, many ways.
Mhm.
Literally, I could walk them through a deal,
Mhm.
whether it's a past deal or an existing deal. Uh, I do a lot of these podcasts like this.
Mhm.
Also, I run a physical in person meetup. So
Mhm.
it's a meetup that we do here in the Houston area every couple of months. And I've got a couple partners that join me in that. And we bring in guest panelists and cover a variety of topics that are both, I guess, more mainstream in multifamily real estate and also ancillary on the fringe, such as
Mhm.
different investing vehicles like creative strategies using maybe solo 401ks or self-directed IRAs or HSAs, education savings accounts, whole life insurance, dual asset strategy. I mean, there's so many different ways to invest in real estate. So that's
Mhm.
all the education that I like to be able to bring to my investor base.
Got it. And how do you vet your investors? Like, um, if somebody have any objection or anything, and how do you select them that you can invest in my deal? Because you cannot just like go out and take anybody's money. You need to trust them too.
Yeah, it's a relationship, right?
Mhm.
It shouldn't be viewed as a transaction.
Yeah.
Uh, Depending on, is this a 506B,
Mhm.
506C type of investment
Yep.
offering? 506B, for
Mhm.
those that are aware, kind of the friends and family approach, where
Yeah.
you really need to vet the investor's suitability to be able to
Mhm.
invest in your offering.
Yep.
And not that you should still do that in a 506C, but a 506C is for accredited investors who typically have a little bit more experience with investments, but not always. But it's that education, right? It's that
Yeah.
suitability to be able to be working with somebody and understanding, do they have enough financial knowledge, investment
Yep.
knowledge? Are they capable of making this investment and not putting themselves at high risk, right? Is this money that they need to live on? If so, probably
Mhm.
not the right investor for
Yeah.
something like this, right?
That makes sense. That makes sense. If you had to go back in time and restart the whole life process again, whole investment again, what would you do different?
Ooh, good question. Um, I think partnerships are super important.
Yep.
And I'm still working on that. I have a variety of partners, mostly deal specific partners. Often me and partners will do deals over and over again.
Hmm.
But sometimes, there's new partners we inject in, or maybe I get brought into a new deal that I haven't worked with a partner before. Uh, I think it's super important to be developing those relationships very early on. Get comfortable with people, have an alignment of vision
Hmm.
for your business and their business and philosophy and risk tolerance and really just get to know partners before you just jump into a deal.
Yep.
So I think I started a little late with partnerships. I did a lot of DIY for the first
Yeah.
probably 5 years of my investing journey. And I wish I would have maybe accelerated that. I think that would
Yeah.
probably have gotten me a little further. But hey, it's okay. This is a starting point, and lots of good relationships now to build off of. And again, I'm in this for the long term.
And follow up question to that. So, what are your core values when you work on any deal? When you bring your investors to invest in your deal, what are the core values do you provide them?
So one of my core values is transparency.
Perfect.
And I think that is something we can all say that. And, we can say, hey, we're going to do, monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, whatever it is. There have been many, many times where I'm reaching out to every single one of my investors one on one if there's a key message that they need to hear.
Hmm.
I know
Yep.
not everybody reads the reports, and maybe not everybody can make a quarterly webinar or something like that.
Hmm.
So if there's something important that I need to share, it's a lot of work for me, but I'll
Hmm.
pick up the phone and call every single one of them. In fact, even earlier this week, I had something like that came up with an asset of mine. It took me until 10 p.m. to reach everybody and share, the key messages. And that took me all day and all night to get through. And I had to move everything else aside I had planned for the day, but that's okay
Yep.
because it's whether it's good news or bad
Hmm.
news, I think it's super important that you keep the lines of communication open. And you know what, if it's bad news, you ought to be communicating even
Yeah.
more frequently.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great answer. And this question I ask everybody, then I'm going to ask right now. Imagine today is your last day on this planet. What message do you want to give to the world?
Mm, wow. Let me see if I can remember this quote that I think is kind of maybe relevant here. If you maybe I'm going to butcher this here. If you're
Mhm.
not afraid to lose sight of the shore, you can't cross the ocean.
Wow.
Okay, so Christopher Columbus said that. And as I think about the way you asked your question, I think you really need to go for it,
Yeah.
and sometimes that means stepping out of your comfort zone, taking a chance, and once you kind of lose sight of the shore behind you,
Mhm.
there's no more lifeline, right? You're
Yeah.
going forward and you got to
Wow.
sail across the ocean and make it happen.
Wow. That's a really, really great answer. And Tony, if you have to recommend one book to either personality development, motivation, or investment, or anything, what would you recommend?
Mm, so many, so many. I read about a book a month.
Mhm.
It's just I literally break that down. I try to read 30 minutes every day just because I think it's important to keep investing in
Yeah,
my own education.
yeah.
And I'm looking across the room here at my bookshelf. Probably one that has impacted me. Okay, I got to pick just one. I'm going to say, I'm going to say Who Not How.
Oh,
I,
there you
I
go.
think Who Not How. It's so applicable. It's something you can apply today,
Mhm.
and I actually I did apply it right away. The key premise of Who Not How is you don't have to know everything and you
Yeah.
don't have to do everything. The important thing is for you to be resourceful and think about your instead of your first question being how can I get something done, think
Mhm.
about who can help me get something done.
Yeah.
And so I know we're short on time, but I'm going to just give a very quick example that was kind of in the real estate space. Last summer, I had a goal to help my son purchase a car. And to
Mhm.
purchase a car, he was going to flip a house with me. And if you
Mm.
remember, my single family days were, 4 or 5 years back. And man, I was just thinking to myself, how am I going to get this done? I gotta find a property. I gotta, find it like direct to seller, maybe a wholesaler. Then we're gonna spend all summer either working with contractors or maybe swinging the hammer. All of these things were going through my mind. I was overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And then as I was actually reading the book, Who Not How,
Yeah.
and I was like, wait a minute. I know people who flip houses every day.
Yeah.
Why don't I just call one of them and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Can we somehow partner with you and find an opportunity to flip a house together?
There you go.
And I did that. And within a couple of weeks, somebody came through. We found a house in Louisiana with one of my friends who became my partner. My son joined us, had a variety of activities and roles within that particular process. We flipped a house. We bought him a car.
Yeah. Perfect.
Boom.
Perfect. Yep. That's a straight answer. Like, you don't have to learn everything. You don't have to know everything. You just need to find the right person to partner with, who can help you in everything. Wow.
That's right. And
Mm.
I'll leave you with this last message on that is also give back.
Yeah.
Think about
Always.
who can you be a who to and for
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great answer. Even, that's why I what I try to do is, like, even if I'm not making money, I still try to donate some to the organizations which provide either food or grocery or everything. I'm like, we are in this world, we are together. We don't have to be against each other. And if we are eating together, we are sharing, and sharing is caring. I'm like, yeah, that's the message I would say I want to give to the world, and I would that's a message you gave right now, and I'm really thankful for that. And Tony,
Yeah, it's awesome.
before we wrap this up, if somebody wants to reach out to you, where can they reach out to you?
Oh, lots of different ways here, but maybe we'll put some of this in the show notes. Probably the
Yeah.
most straightforward way is to go to my website, which is Novo, Novo, multifamilygroup.com.
Hmm. Perfect.
From there, you can hit my contact page and schedule a call with me. Also, we can drop in the show notes LinkedIn,
Yep.
as well as my coaching business, which is Grit to Growth with hyphens in between. Grit to
Perfect.
Growth.
That'll do it for you. And thank you so much, Tony, and thank you for your time, and I'll see you another one, guys. All right.
Okay.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.